Hello and welcome to the final module of this course. It's Standard 10, Distance Education. So this module is actually dealing with just those programs that offer some form of distance education. However, we do recommend that you all listen to it to get information because this is becoming more and more important, and we want to make sure everyone understands what we mean by distance education. First of all, COMTA is allowed to accredit programs with up to 49% distance education. Not above that, so they cannot be fully online classes. We're not allowed by the Department of Education to accredit those types of programs. Now, this 49% does include both fully online as well as hybrid, or what might be considered a blended course. It also includes any general education options that may be offered at your institution in a degree program. So up to 49%, and it does include hybrid as well, which means there's some portion of the course hours are face-to-face and some portion are online. So if your program includes these options, Standard 10 applies to you. So let's look again at the distance education definition, and this is per the Department of Ed guidelines. So distance education is where students are separated from the instructor, and it supports regular and substantive interaction between the students and the instructor. This is not independent study. So there is still regular and substantive interaction between the students and the instructor. Distance education can happen synchronously, meaning at the same time, or asynchronously, where an instructor may post information and then the students get it. This course that you're taking right now is an example of asynchronous distance ed. Distance education includes both fully online as well as hybrid or blended courses. But please note that this is only if credits or hours are earned. It does not include online homework, for example. If you have students do things online for homework, that's not considered distance education. But as soon as the students are earning credit or earning hours as part of the hours or part of that online experience, it is considered distance education, and you do need to comply with these standards. So distance education includes the internet. That's the most obvious one, online, but it can also include audio conferencing, one-way, two-way transmissions through open broadcast, closed circuit, cable, Wi-Fi. There's more details there. And I recommend that you take a look at the definition of terms for a complete definition on distance education. So an overview of the distance education standards, there's 3 requirements for programmatic and institutional: basic approvals, curriculum and instruction, and security assessment. And for those of you institutionally accredited only, you have to also have standards in place for student support as well as infrastructure and support. And there are some guidelines that have been established by the Commission called the COMTA Distance Education Guidelines, which are available online, and again provide a lot more detail and guidance and instruction on complying with these standards. Let's take a look at the requirements in the basic approval section of the standard. Essentially, if you're adding distance education, meaning you're currently accredited and you're going to add a distance education to your program in any form, it does need to be reviewed and approved by COMTA prior to offering it. And again, no more than 49% of the hours or credits, whichever is less, credits or hours, can be offered in an online format. It's not allowed under COMTA's recognition criteria from the Department of Education. This does include general education for degrees, so do make sure that that's part of it. And you must have secured all state approvals, and this would be for in-state where you are, as well as any out-of-state if you're working with students out of state. Please note that this is becoming increasingly important because there are actually some states that do not allow any distance education to have been taken in order to qualify for licensure. So please check with the different states for both the educational approval to offer the program as well as any licensing requirements after. Section B, curriculum and instruction requirements for distance education. Well, obviously the course content should be appropriate to the online learning method. So that would be, of course, nothing that needs to be done hands-on or have immediate supervision or feedback. And what the reviewers will look at is those COMTA competencies, which are taught and assessed via online methods, should be appropriate to the language of the competency. For example, if it's perform, that is probably not to be done online. The hours and credits that you assign to the online course or portion of the course should be comparable to the face-to-face time. And distance education absolutely must provide regular, meaningful, effective, timely interaction between students and faculty. This is one of the most important things that they'll be looking for. And the program must maintain some control over the curriculum. So if you're using a third party, it can't be completely outsourced. You do need to be able to adjust your curriculum just like you would adjust any other curriculum. And faculty must be trained in distance education. Again, if you're using a third party, they may be specialists in distance education. If you're incorporating distance education in a current program with your current faculty, make sure you teach them how to use distance education methods effectively. Section C, security and assessment. These are really dictated by the Department of Education. We've used their guidelines that students must have a private, secure access, login, which includes login, username, and password. And there are effective assessment of student learning involved. And there are methods to assure student identity and academic integrity. And these would include something like the secure login, also proctored exams. Section D, student support. This is often already looked at on the institutional level. So for those of you that are programmatic accreditation, this does not apply to you, but for those institutions offering distance ed, we will look at these as well. So this is an institutional accreditation only. If you offer distance education, especially if it's required, that it's only offered in that way, the students must be made aware of this prior to enrolling in your program. So if they have to take a course via distance ed, they need to know that ahead of time. It should be clearly published in your catalogs, your brochures, and the like. And you need to make sure that the students are oriented to distance education and ensuring that they can be successful. Some programs may have a little assessment test to help students decide if they would succeed in distance education courses or not. That's when it's an option. If it's not an option, it's required. You want to make sure that you're providing satisfactory orientation. This may or may not be applicable because usually programs are having a hybrid form where of course you're still having students on campus, but if they're ever completely off campus doing fully online at a certain time, you need to make sure that they do have student support services available to them. And per USDE guidelines, the ADA or American for Disabilities Act standards must be met with whatever structure you use. So infrastructure and technical support. Again, this is institutional accreditation only. The requirements of this standard include that you use a LMS, which stands for Learning Management System, or a similar platform, which facilitates the interaction and accountability. Learning management systems you may have heard of are Blackboard, Moodle. These are some of the larger ones. Even if your school doesn't do something that large in scope, the platform that you use must have some interactive capabilities and accountability security capabilities. And we recommend that you take a look at those guidelines for more information on that. You need to ensure that you have personnel on staff that are capable of supporting the distance education hardware and software. You need to make sure that there is effective and timely support for the technical needs of both your faculty and your students. That you have sufficient bandwidth to provide your distance education courses. And that course content and activity of students and faculty is backed up daily. There's some important details that are covered in the course lessons themselves, as well as the guidelines document that I mentioned. So please make sure you have that on hand before you get started with the rest of the lesson. Thank you very much. And thank you so much for working with us during this course. I hope you enjoyed it. For those that are pursuing institutional accreditation, after you finish this course, we were going to ask you to continue the next part, which will go through standards 11 through 15.